In our CRM, we of course want to make sure that there's a record that those folks have been reached out to. And the old process was a big Google spreadsheet where that information is housed. And then it takes a team of DAs to go through, clean up the spreadsheet, and then do some kind of mass upload process into CRM. And now the interactions themselves are so streamlined in Signal that we can just ask the end users to do that. And it's not all that heavy of a lift because again, it's all prompted. So they do the outreach and then the prompt for the interaction just pops right up and it takes 2 seconds.
Welcome to the EverTrue Innovators podcast, where we meet the innovative voices behind the ideas moving fundraising forward. Hannah, this one speaks to my ops-loving heart.
Same. Boston College used Signal to completely overhaul their year-end outreach.
From chaos to custom cadences and more donors reached.
Here come the winners of the Efficiency Innovator Award, Boston College.
Thanks for joining us. We were hoping you could take us through your role at BC and what brought you into advancement and fundraising.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Hannah and Keith, for having me. My role, Senior Associate Director of Digital Giving at Boston College. So I manage a team of 4 digital gift officers and a development assistant. And I carry a portfolio of a little bit more than 500 donors myself. I manage the digital giving program and strategy at Boston College within the broader digital and leadership giving team. I want to give my team a shout out from the get-go. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about the great work that they've been up to. The 4 digital gift officers, Aiden Andrews, Austin Sforza, Michelle Goddard. Dan Walsh recently left Boston College, so we're currently hiring for his replacement. And Jason Wallace is our development assistant. So I'm a career changer. So I started my career in corporate finance. I did a couple of roles, budget analysis, headcount analysis, sales forecasting, those types of things. Did that for about 5 years. And I was looking for a change. And I made the first step in a 2-step pivot to where I am today. And that was into higher education endowment, finance and operations. I was with Wellesley College on the endowment side of things, still pretty different from fundraising. Definitely mission-driven organization, excellent institution, still spending a lot of time behind the desk, a lot of time in Microsoft Excel, a lot of individual analysis. And after 5 years of that, I decided that I wanted to get out from behind the desk, get a chance to meet with folks, tell the story of an institution. And this opportunity at Boston College came up. The first digital gift officer at BC role was open, and I was fortunate enough to interview for and get hired into that role. So that's kind of the beginning of my fundraising story.
I just have a quick follow-up because I'm curious. How do you feel like the start of your career has influenced how you approach your work?
That's a great question. And I think it's an interesting intersection in that a lot of what I value about being in fundraising now is about meeting people, building relationships, that type of work. Managing a digital giving program, it's still important to focus on systems and processes. And I think starting in finance and operations gave me a solid foundation for thinking in that way, making sure that foundation is in place and then using that to really let digital gift officers be themselves and bring their personality to donor interactions.
So we do have a special question that we ask all of the guests, and I think you're going to have a unique angle on this, not starting your career within the fundraising space. So I'm excited for your answer here. What is one piece of conventional wisdom about year-end giving or donor outreach that you secretly, or maybe not so secretly, disagree with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started the fundraising chapter of my career as Boston College's first digital gift officer. And then I went on to be BC's first dedicated manager of a digital giving team. So our director of annual and leadership giving, Anthony Burke, from day one has put a lot of trust in me and given me a lot of latitude to be entrepreneurial in this work. So I don't know if I necessarily got my start in a conventional way when it comes to either year-end giving or outreach, but I can share an anecdote about conventional wisdom from a prior role and how that applies to how I think about fundraising now. And that's during my time in the endowment space, the conventional wisdom always was when you're making major investment decisions, before you can sign the contracts, you need to do a site visit, see people in person. visit people's offices, really get that in-person meeting as a part of the due diligence process. And then, of course, COVID happened and those in-person meetings were no longer possible. And the whole industry found that, yeah, in fact, you can make major decisions, including major financial decisions, without that in-person meeting. And I think as I then transitioned into digital giving, that really shaped my mindset on, can we have real relationships? Can we have in-depth, important conversations about something so personal for folks, which is their philanthropic intentions and their relationship with an institution? Can we do that all over Zoom? And, the answer is yes. And I think getting an opportunity to do that through digital giving was certainly influenced by seeing that shift in the prior industry I was in.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. Gosh, the amount of decisions I now make completely based off Zoom conversations or phone conversations. I've been working at home now for a few years, and I think a lot of folks have become much more comfortable. I really appreciate your answer to the question about conventional wisdom. And I really like your approach. It actually reminds me of, and this is going to come pretty far out of left field, but back in the day, watching the behind the scenes of the movie Lost in Translation, and something that always stuck with me, Sofia Coppola talked about how her process was to plan so meticulously, just have such a strategy so that they could be spontaneous. It was really like, as long as you had the structure and the foundation, you could let the director of the photography or some of the actors really just be who they were and kind of expand based on that strategy. So that's when I took it, as relating to that attitude.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that really plays into digital giving as well, where it's like you think about your portfolio, you analyze your portfolio, you think about your year, you think about the different types of outreach you're doing over the course of a year, whether that's within the digital giving team or as an organization more broadly. And you think about cadences and prescribed outreach and kind of figuring out all of the meticulous planning that goes into all of that, so digital gift officers can be themselves when they finally get on the phone or on Zoom with donors. And I think that's a really good analogy.
Appreciate it. I haven't thought about that in a minute.
Well, talking about everything moving kind of digital and not necessarily in person, I think is a good lead into talking about the Calling All Eagles campaign, which is one of the reasons why you and your team were named 2025 Innovators. Can you tell us a little bit about the campaign? It reimagined year-end outreach using Signal, and we would love to know what sparked the shift from maybe a traditional pen and paper process to a fully digital strategy and what that transformation actually looked like.
Sure. So we had kind of multiple goals in looking at moving this process into Signal. The first is we're always looking for efficiency gains. It's a lot of work and a lot of folks put a lot of effort into organizing both fiscal and calendar year-end campaign outreach. But also, I believe that Signal adoption within the organization more broadly beyond the digital giving team is a good thing. It's symbiotic. It's good for everyone. So we were looking for a process change that would serve both of those goals. We pull a large data set of donors who have given in prior years, but not yet this year, both at calendar year end and fiscal year end. And then there's some logic that goes into assigning lists of those donors to different folks within the organization, region, stuff like that. And now in Signal, rather than having this big unwieldy spreadsheet where all the information lives and everybody's in there in a shared Google Sheet, all the assignments are done in Signal. From an end user perspective, it's so much more streamlined. They can just log into Signal and see their folks that they're due to reach out to, and everything's prompted. They can go in, find their people, add to Cadence, and everything they need to do, there's a prompt for it. But the major efficiency gain for us on the administrative side is to do with entering all of those interactions. So in our CRM, we of course want to make sure that there's a record that those folks have been reached out to. And the old process was a big Google spreadsheet where that information is housed. And then it takes a team of DAs to go through, clean up the spreadsheet, and then do some kind of mass upload process into CRM. And now the interactions themselves are so streamlined in Signal that we can just ask the end users to do that. And it's not all that heavy of a lift because, again, it's all prompted. So they do the outreach and then the prompt for the interaction just pops right up and it takes 2 seconds. And the information we need is captured and it's in the system. So it really just eliminates that huge lift for our administrative staff after the fact.
To build on what you're talking about in terms of Signal, I think we're looking for a real tactical and practical answer here. How are you building the custom cadences for their outreach? What went into setting up that process across the team?
So I'll back up a little bit and just say I'm a huge fan of custom cadences for a wide variety of different use cases. So for this particular fiscal and calendar year-end outreach, we're asking folks who maybe aren't frontline fundraisers, or if they are, they might be major gift officers who are used to a very personalized approach to their relationships. So for this particular custom cadence, we're really looking for simplicity and a cadence where folks are going to go in and feel it's achievable and doable and not overwhelming. So for this particular application, it's one email and then a few days later, one phone call, and that's the whole cadence. So for example, within the digital giving team, we would also have a fiscal year end or calendar year end cadence with 6 or 7 steps over 3 weeks where, we're trying to get to people who are in portfolio and we're being thoughtful about exactly what day we want our last couple of outreaches to land as it relates to either fiscal year end or calendar year end. We use custom cadences for a bunch of different things, Giving Day. But for this particular one, we really want folks who aren't in Signal as part of their day-to-day role to log in and say, oh yeah, this is doable. I can get through this.
Yeah, having the cadences set up, having the prompts ready to go. I think that was a large part of the intention when it came to Signal, was taking a lot of the planning and the drudgery out of the process so people can see very clearly who they need to reach out to and focus on that outreach, making it meaningful and impactful, heartfelt, fun, whatever they need to do.
Yeah. And part of the process really is taking that to its logical extreme where you're getting the list, you're getting a brief cadence. And for somebody like a development assistant who maybe doesn't have a ton of experience with outreach, it feels, doable and not overwhelming, all the way up to a major gift officer who might just be really busy around calendar year end or fiscal year end. They can lend a hand to this campaign without feeling like it's bogging them down and taking too much time out of their other important work.
Going along with that, can you tell us about the experience and what it was like for development assistants using Signal for the first time? And are there any anecdotes, initial reactions, or early wins that stood out to you and the team?
Yeah, so we did ask a wide range of folks to help with this initiative who aren't necessarily frontline fundraisers, development assistants, and support staff from around the organization. But we also asked leadership gift officers and major gift officers as well to lend a hand in this initiative. So I think, anytime you have any change to any work process in any industry, there's always going to be a little bit of a hurdle to overcome. And I think it's sometimes the case that the longer you've been doing something one way, maybe the more that feels like a hurdle. So I think what we initially had to work through was the setup, getting in Signal, learning about the navigation, and taking that 45 minutes on Zoom with EverTrue to get that initial setup. And then once we were through that, it was almost universally positive feedback. I think the development assistants took to it very quickly. They really enjoyed getting a glimpse into what a first rung on the fundraising ladder day to day could look like. And then all the way up to the major gift officers, I saw some positive feedback there as well, where you get through that initial friction of setting up a new thing. But once you're through that, it's like, wow, okay, now we have efficiency gains. I had folks asking me about ways that they might use Signal in their day-to-day processes. So all in all, this is a little bit of a lift from the get-go, but you only have to do that once, and then you're kind of off to the races for future iterations.
That's great. And to dive into a specific example of how this showed up in practice in terms of Signal specifically helping to make the outreach for this campaign, or I guess all of your campaigns now, more efficient or maybe more targeted.
So in terms of the year-end giving specifically, the efficiency is some of the things we've already talked about. Administratively, this is a big lift, and eliminating the cumbersome spreadsheet process for uploading interactions. When I think about our digital giving team more broadly, when I look at our portfolio construction process and the integration of Signal into the way we do all of our work, I think it's allowed us to be hugely more targeted. I think it would be very difficult to stay organized with 1,000 prospect portfolios without a product like Signal. We're very lucky at BC to have a really strong prospect development team. So they work with EverTrue. There's data sharing between EverTrue and our prospect management team, trying to get the best set of prospects for all our digital gift officers. And I think that's where we really see target gains using Signal. I'd love to see that grow as we continue to grow that program.
Giving a shout out to prospect researchers, prospect development is going to make a lot of hearts at EverTrue swoon.
Definitely got to give them a shout out. They're in the process of doing a lot of work on our fiscal year 26 portfolios right now. They're doing an excellent job. So always got to give them a shout out.
Can you talk about early signs of success that you've seen so far with fiscal year end, or success that you saw with calendar year end, and where you're thinking you'll go with it next?
Sure. So way back when we were thinking about the early stages of our year end process, but also just our team and our program overall. Again, I have to give a lot of credit to Aiden, Austin, Dan, Michelle, and Jason. The approach they took when we were transitioning to Signal. I think I mentioned that BC was the first organization to do outreach in Signal, and we did a lot of work in the early adopter group. So that really wouldn't have been possible without the digital gift team here at BC being flexible and adaptable. They all kind of took on a can-do attitude working through that transition, especially when a program is integral to the work you do every day, making that transition from SalesLoft to Signal. The team worked through challenges as they arose and delivered positive results in terms of meetings and gift close right through the transition to Signal, which I continue to be impressed by. Got to give a shout out to leadership here at BC as well. They were really supportive of our team, which helped give us the confidence to be one of the first programs to really dive in with Signal. And then one more shout out. Our DXPM, Catherine Burke, did an excellent job of just working with us through training material. She really had her finger on the pulse of the Signal rollout and was a huge help in getting us over the finish line on that. So, people having a positive can-do attitude about a new process and having leadership really buy in and trust us to get it done.
Yes. Important. And it's definitely a challenge. I know proposing any new technology is going to be met with, skepticism at best, resistance, at worst. But I'm glad that you and your team were able to advocate for a change that sounds like it's making everyone's lives a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, we had a great first year in Signal. And like you said, anytime you're working through a change like that, I think it's really important to have that positive attitude and to have internal champions. And, every member of my team helped somebody with Signal during the fiscal year end outreach rollout. And it was great for my team to be available, to be subject matter experts, to kind of raise their internal brand as people who know what they're doing and are excellent at their work. So again, got to give the shout out to the team.
Always. So for other teams that are still relying on a manual process for year-end giving, what lessons would you share from your experience, and how has the adoption of Signal shaped your broader thinking about innovation in advancement?
I think a transition to a Signal-based process for year-end giving, it's worth the upfront investment of time and energy. And I think BC's approach is showing some promise, and I think the best approach for each organization is going to vary. But again, it comes down to having those internal champions with the positive attitude and an attitude of being able to work through it and get over the initial hurdle of setup, which, to be honest, it isn't really that hard. It's 45 minutes or so on a Zoom, and everybody can get all set up, and it's just maintaining positivity around it. I think it's worth it. And I also think as more institutions start to use Signal in this way, EverTrue will streamline the way it provides support and reporting. I think EverTrue is an organization that is always willing to partner and be thought partners on how we can improve processes. If this starts to gain momentum and other organizations are using Signal in this way, I think we'll get some good partnership from EverTrue in terms of refining all around. I think the digital giving space in general is a great environment for trying new things and being entrepreneurial.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. I think our product team will be over the moon to hear those words as well, because Signal in a lot of ways is the result of a lot of people at EverTrue just having open ears to what people wanted in our space. Conversations through the Raise podcast, conversations with our customer success folks, talking to different customers, conversations over a coffee at a case conference. And all of that ends up getting filtered and brought to the product team, who just, work day and night to make sure that the latest offerings, the latest incarnations of EverTrue, which really is Signal, is useful and helpful and just fits in like a glove to your organization. Congratulations again, Lincoln, on being an innovator. Congratulations to Boston College. I have a feeling this won't be the last time you'll be an innovator. Who knows what's going to happen in 2026? Let's see.
Yeah, great. Thanks again, Keith and Hannah, for having me. This was fun, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch.